Welcome back. On this episode, I want to talk about something that has really been a personal struggle for me at times, and that is this question, is it a sin to have a bad thought? This used to be something that really was a heavy burden for me, but as I have drawn closer with the Lord, as I've walked with Him over the years, as well as other people who have similar struggles, I've come to find that the answer to that question is no. No, it's not a sin. Now, with most questions, they can be a little nuanced, and so I want to explain that the reason why I'm saying no is that because I think there's a big difference between something like a fleeting thought or an invasive thought, something that didn't originate necessarily with me, it wasn't something I was trying to focus on, not something I was being intentional about, opposed to a thought that is more deep-rooted or intentional. And so for an example, and this might seem silly, but it's something I think everyone can relate to. So say you're walking down the street, or maybe you're in college, you're in school or work, whatever the place may be, and you see this person walk by and they are very attractive, very beautiful. You know, that is kind of a natural thought. It just kind of comes. It's not necessarily intentional. And there's nothing wrong with that inherently. There's no sin in that. Where it can become a problem is if now that thought that has just come into my mind, now I start to dwell on it. I start to think more intentionally on it. And in fact, it maybe becomes something like a lust. And then now that has become a problem. But for so many of us, we have the strangest thoughts that come through our minds sometimes. And I really appreciate this quote. It's actually from Martin Luther, who was one of the earliest reformers of Christianity from the Catholic Church. And he had this saying, he said that, I can't stop the birds from flying over my head, but I can prevent them from making a nest in my hat. Now, that might sound kind of strange to us today, but back then they didn't really have the best of hygiene, and sometimes literally they would have birds that would come and nest on their shoulder or on their head or in their hat. Maybe in modern day terms it will make more sense, and think of it this way. Think of an air traffic controller, that you are basically the air traffic controller of your own mind. You can't control every plane that flies over, but you do get to control which ones land and which ones have to leave. And that is really powerful to come to that understanding and to that realization. Because when we allow those thoughts to fester or become deep-rooted, we really start this process that James explains in James chapter 1, verses 14 and 15, that these thoughts, they become a desire or a lust, and we begin to be enticed by them. And then we start to think on them so much that we work towards whatever it is, maybe even participating in that thought or in that sin. And then it has gone too far. Ultimately, as we read in 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 4 and 5, we are to take captive every thought to the obedience of Jesus Christ. And how do we do that? Well, one simple thing is to pray. And I know that's kind of a blanket answer that people hear a lot, but it really does make a difference that when that thought comes, that I make a conscious effort, an intentional effort to drive it away, either by offering a prayer that it might leave or even focusing on something else. If you can, get up and move around, change whatever you're doing. Even just that little bit of change can break that thought from taking a deeper root in us. But one thing I really want to say about this, and if you don't get anything else from this episode, please listen. Do not beat yourself up. Do not destroy yourself because you had a thought. I did this so many times in my life, and I still struggle with it today. And what ends up happening is I just weaken my resolve and I weaken my character, and I become more susceptible to the thing that I don't want to participate in or the thought that I don't want to focus on. God loves you. Don't destroy yourself. Give yourself grace. Remember, you can control what stays in your mind and in your heart. You have the power through Jesus Christ to make that decision. And I also strongly encourage you to find some trustworthy friend or person, someone who can point you and guide you in the way of Christ, someone who won't judge you and will be able to listen to some of the things or concerns that you have. Because for me, in my own life, when I was able to talk to someone and say, hey, these are some of the thoughts that I'm having, and they told me, okay, Andrew, well, you're not unusual. I mean, I've had those thoughts too. What a liberating moment that is to hear that. And so I do encourage you to find someone who you can trust and share some of those things or those concerns with. So until next time, this is Andrew King, your fellow brother and companion in this journey we call life.
Proclaim the glory of the Lord. Let every tongue confess He reigns. Lift up His name in praises forever. Proclaim the glory of the Lord. Make known